Hey, what's going on? It's Andre Della Monica, and it's time for the MEM Xperience podcast. And today, we're going to be talking about a very exciting topic, Microsoft Tunnel. And for that, I have Lance Crandall with me here.
Hey, Andre, how's it going?
Good, Lance.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today. Lance, before we jump into the whole Microsoft tunnel conversation, I'd love to ask you, like, how did you join Microsoft?
Well, Andre, you're already starting off with some really hard questions here, so this is going to be a really rough podcast, I think.
Okay.
So I've actually been with Microsoft for about 10 years now, coming up this summer, actually. And basically, I had been working in enterprise client management for a really long time for a couple of companies. I've been an enterprise desktop architect, and I wanted to try something different. I'd always wanted to work for Microsoft. It seemed like a impressive company with a lot of really smart people. And I've been working with a lot of smart people before, but just wanted a different kind of opportunity to kind of just grow. And so this was back in the XP to Windows 7 migration days. And so they
Awesome.
were desperate for anyone who could say the word Windows 7 or imaging. And so they would take anybody, I guess. So anyway, so I got a position in the Microsoft Consulting Services, and so I was
Oh,
helping
okay.
large customers move from XP to Windows 7, and then there was a good opportunity that kind of came up. There's a really small development site here in Utah where I'm from, and I'd really wanted to kind of move after a couple of years over into software development and kind of building the product. And the team here actually was helping to build some of the products that I've worked on for years and years, and so it just seemed like a really interesting fit for me to kind of just go and continue to expand my skills, and so I interviewed and got that position as well. And so I've been doing program management ever since and
That's great, man.
building enterprise software. So it's been fun.
Excellent. Yeah, I know you're one of our best PMs in the team, so we really appreciate having you around. Um, so yeah,
I don't know about that, but thanks, Andre. I'll take it.
so it's cool. Actually, I didn't know that you worked for MCS before and then software development. That's awesome. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Great stuff. So yeah, since you're already kind of, I also said, mentioned your name already, so I was going to let you introduce yourself, but then, of course, I already mentioned your name. But thanks for the introduction here.
Stealing all my thunder.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about Microsoft Tunnel then, Lance. You want to give us like an overview? What is the Microsoft Tunnel solution? One thing that I'd love to focus on, and I know you do this very well when you're presenting, talking about Tunnel, is about the whys, right? So why you came up right with the team for with this solution.
Yeah. I think we'd love to say that all of our customers are cloud-based with all the solutions that they use, right? Like all their apps, all their resources they need to access are all in the cloud. But I think the reality is that's not the case, right? And it just kind of takes time for customers to get there. That might be like kind of in a hybrid situation where some of their things are on-prem and some of them are still in the cloud.
Right.
And so with Intune, we really need to provide a way for these customers to be able to access those on-prem resources from anywhere. So a lot of the devices we support, iOS, Android, Mac, Windows, those can all be devices that are outside your corporate network. And I think as we kind of think about even some of the situations today with the pandemic and things like that, where this really kind of accelerated the need for a remote access type solution. And so that's really what kind of drove us to build this, is that there's a need in the market. There's a need for Intune to be able to support this. Obviously, Intune's been a cloud-based product, but we just needed to have that tie-in back on-prem to help end users really be productive from anywhere. And so that's really kind of the main reasons why we built that. And we really focused on iOS and Android first because a lot of the customers that we have may have been using Windows for a long time. Obviously, that's been in enterprises forever. And they already may have had like a VPN type solution that they're using there. But on iOS and Android, you'd think they could just use the same product, but unfortunately, it's kind of different. There might be licensing or new things they need to spin up or things like that. And so just it's more complicated for them to kind of handle that. And usually those teams managing Windows, at least in the past, sometimes those teams have been separate. The teams managing Windows, the teams managing mobile devices are different teams, and so
Yes.
they may not always share those same components or their different departments even sometimes. So, just having something that like the mobility team could kind of own and deploy and, add those capabilities that they were looking for remote access, just was really something that our customers were asking for. So.
Yeah, no, this is good, Les. Yeah, and I know, you know this very well as well, that the customers always wanted to see a first party VPN solution from our side, right? And like not having like a third party where they have to have like a third party subscription with another solution, right? And that's kind of huge help for them. It's a huge piece of feedback they shared with us before.
Yeah, and I think having something that's really integrated as well with, just the Microsoft stack. It's built with that stack in mind. If you already own Intune and whatnot, then it just makes sense, right? It's just something that's integrated and pretty easy to set up, and yeah, you just kind of have one place to go if you have issues, right? It's not like, oh shoot, I don't have connectivity. What do I do?
Exactly.
I don't have to go to some other vendor and try to figure out what's happening. I could just go to the same vendor and be able to have that kind of complete stack together.
Absolutely. It makes total sense. Yeah. So do you want to maybe then walk us through, what is the Microsoft Tunnel solution, how it works, etc.? Or you have another comments?
Sure. Yeah. So I think, really the solution, like I mentioned for now, is kind of geared around iOS and Android. And so really it's made up of a couple components. So, kind of at the beginning, you go to, sorry, my camera's kind of going in and out of focus
no
here.
worries.
Hopefully it'll kind of fix itself. But anyway, so kind of the first thing you'll do is you'll have like this on-prem component that you need to set up, right? We have to have some sort of a gateway to get your cloud-based devices back on-prem. And so we built this solution on Linux and Docker. And so Docker is just kind of a capability to help us be able to get some proactive monitoring of the systems that's running inside that Docker container, and really just have kind of an easy way to deploy that in like a containerized type of a way. And so, with that, you'd spin up Linux, you'd add Docker, and then you just run this really simple script to kind of just pull down the Docker containers, and then it just automatically does the setup for you at that point. And so the thing that's only, the only thing that some customers have struggled with in the past was just the need to open up the right firewall ports, but that's just kind of like with any on-prem solution, right? Like people figuring out their own network sometimes is a little challenging. But we added some capabilities with a script that we provide as well that kind of just double checks and makes sure that all those ports are open. So now you can spend less time trying to figure out like, gosh, what's the port I didn't open from the list that we provide, and it'll just kind of tell you what to do. And so that's made it a lot easier. I have honestly, since we've done this in past preview, I haven't heard of a lot of issues with setup there. So that's been really positive that we've just kind of taken the feedback from customers that we've gotten over the past 5-6 months or so and just integrated that into the product. And that's one of the things I really love too, is just being able to interact with customers and work with them on the solution. I feel like we've had kind of a lot of design partners with some really large enterprises to make sure that we're kind of hitting all of their situations, and they're finding the right solutions for them, and then trying to make it easier for everyone else as well to implement. So that's been really positive, just to get that feedback from customers and be able to put it in the product.
Absolutely. No, I agree. So right now the Microsoft Tunnel is in public preview, right? And how many customers you had in the private preview?
So private preview, we limited just from like a resource perspective. Right. And so, we had I think 6 customers, but these were all really large enterprises. But that was for private preview, right? That was like before we released. So at Ignite, we did a presentation on all the capabilities and what our plans were. And then, we opened it up to the public. And so, we've seen a pretty significant increase of customers using this over the last 6 months. And, we're still in preview, and we could talk a little bit more about why we're still in preview, if you'd like going forward. But, that's kind of like just really positive to see customers starting to implement this and get the value out of it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great segue. Yeah, if you want to talk about why we're in public preview, go ahead.
Yeah, so really like the back end, while there's been things we continue to add, of course, the products are never done. Kind of the core set of functionality really is pretty stable at this point, and we have a lot of things we still want to do, but it's in a good situation where we feel like it's GA quality. And I've had a bunch of customers that have asked me like, hey, we don't want to deploy this while it's in preview, but which I can understand. But at the same time, this is a fully supported, even while it's in preview, it's fully supported. Like, customers can call support and if they have issues and get the help that they need, we monitor things. And so if there were issues, we'll make sure we take care of those, even though it's in preview. So even though it says preview, it's still 100% supported. And so the reason why we have kept this in preview is because a while ago we started partnering with the Defender team to kind of have like this better together story. And so what we did is we partnered with them and we came up with this kind of security and connectivity model where it really made sense for us from our perspective to have both of those capabilities in the same application. And just one example of that, if you look at like Defender and its threat defense capabilities that exist on iOS and Android, some of the things that it does is it evaluates the device for risk, whether that's like a phishing risk or malware or something like that, and it can determine if that device is risky or not. And so it sends that value to Intune as part of conditional access and compliance policies and says, hey, is this device above my threshold for this, the threat level or the risk level? And if it is, then let's actually just block access to on-prem resources through Tunnel, right? And so really that tie-in with security into Tunnel and protecting your on-prem network just by having that kind of like big switch, I'll call it, of saying like, hey, this device is risky, don't give it access to our on-prem network. That really ties in together. And so that's really where we feel like there's this better together story. So like I mentioned, we've been working with them for maybe the last 6+ months or so on this combined application for iOS and Android and this combined experience. And so today, what we have in public preview is the fact that you can use like the individual and separate Tunnel applications for both iOS and Android to do the connectivity back on-prem. But with this new experience, there is like this minor migration, right? So you have to create like a new VPN profile. You have to deploy this new application, remove the old profile, remove the old app. So since there's kind of this migration sounds like a really rough term, right? Like we want to make sure that this isn't like a complicated thing. So I tried to make it simple, right? It's, you create a new VPN profile, deploy the new application, remove the old stuff, you're done. Like that's what I mean. So it's not super complicated or anything. But this move, I guess, to the new application, we felt like let's not put this in GA quite yet, right? Let's make sure we have this new unified application out there and ready to go so that everyone can just kind of start using that. And if you were a preview customer, a public preview customer that was using the existing apps, that's fine. Just move to the new stuff. But that's kind of why we're holding off on GA, just because we had this unified client experience that we were building, and we just want to make sure that got out there before we said, hey, we're good. This is like GA now. So it's kind of like our final landing place for the client application. So
absolutely. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. That's great to know. So from the architecture perspective, how you want to talk about, like, how you want to explain the architecture for us here?
Sure. So I'll try and do it in words, I guess. But so basically what you do is, like I mentioned, you have, this Linux server, Linux VMs, and then you run Docker on that. You pull down the containers using a script that we have.
That's your VPN server, right?
That's the server, basically, right? And then, you have your firewall ports you've configured and whatever. And what you do is you go into Intune and you create what's called a server config. And so that's just like a centralized way to manage settings, maybe even across multiple servers. Most companies aren't going to deploy just a single server. Not really a great practice. So we want to be able to say, like, hey, if you had, like, say, a bunch of split tunneling rules, that you don't want to recreate those like 10 times if you had 10 different servers. Like, let's just have that happen once, and then you can apply that to all your servers automatically. And then if you change something, you don't have to go into 10 different servers, on-prem and try and make sure you've done the right thing across those 10 servers. Just do it one time in Intune. So the first thing you do is, like I said, you create that server config that contains like split tunneling rules and the port to listen on and those sorts of things. And then you create a site, and a site is basically just like a logical grouping of these VPN servers. So at the site level, you say, what is my endpoint that my clients will connect to? So if I had 5 servers, I'm going to put it behind a load balancer, and I have like a single endpoint that those clients would hit, right? And so I'd say, like, vpn.contoso.com is my endpoint. That's a load balancer, and it splits out to 5 different servers. Great. So that's what my site is. And then at the site level as well, you have server configs that you'll apply. And so you could just say, hey, I have this one server config that I've configured. Let's put that at the site. So now as you spin up those VMs that contain your Linux, or excuse me, your tunnel gateway servers, then at that point you're saying which site do I want this to join to as part of the installation script. So it'll say, here's like the 3 sites that I have, pick one. So you pick one, and then at that point it just pulls down that server config that you've associated, and it automatically configures the server. And then, like I said, going forward, if you need to change any of those things, you just change it in Intune, and the servers automatically, get those updates without you having to go to each one and figure that out.
I see.
So then after that, then what you do, so now your servers are all set up and everything's awesome. Now you go set up your VPN profiles, and it's just like any other VPN profile you set up in Intune. There's a few different configurations to set up there, very basic, and then you deploy that to your clients. And then the last thing is, obviously, you deploy the client application for both iOS and Android through Intune as well. And then, your MDM enrolled devices will get that profile, the app, and know which endpoints to connect to. And that's basically it.
Okay. This is great. Yeah. And by the way, everything that Lance is explaining here, it's well described by him, by himself, right? And others from the team in the docs, right? I know the docs is pretty comprehensive on that part, Lance. So just to, I'll definitely share a link to the docs in the description of this video, but just want to mention this. Okay. So what else you want to teach us about Microsoft Tunnel, Lance?
So yeah, there's like a couple of things that are probably important for customers to understand, which is just the what are some of the different features that we have. So we support most of the VPN functionality that you would expect from even the other providers that we have. So if you're using someone else, it's fine. We use the same type of capabilities there. And so one of the things that we support, there's always platform differences that you have to consider, right? And so if we think about iOS and Android, they both support a Per-App VPN. That's something that's really common for customers to want to utilize. So they say something like, hey, if I'm using Edge, then Edge is the only application that is actually getting on-prem access. So it's not like a full device VPN, that's allowing access from anywhere. So that's really common, like I said, especially with Edge and some line of business apps, to be able to set up that Per-App VPN so that those apps are the only apps that get access back on-prem.
Sure.
So then we support what's called always-on VPN, and that's something that kind of differs per platform. So on Android, if you configure this, what it means is when you spin up the device and it reboots or whatever, like the VPN automatically connects. But then it gets a little complicated because that doesn't necessarily mean that you have a full device VPN. You could, but if you've configured Per-App VPN, now we're saying like only those applications. So like the end user doesn't have to go into the application and click connect, right? It's just that the VPN is on, but it only sends traffic from the apps that you've specified. Or if you aren't using a Per-App VPN on Android and you just say, hey, I just want all traffic, to go through this VPN, then great. Always on spins up, and then it is a full device VPN at that point. So traffic from any application or any location goes through that. So then on iOS, it's slightly different. So it obviously supports Per-App VPN that we talked about, but then there's also some capabilities to do like Safari URLs. So you could say like, hey, if I hit this specific URL, like katoso.local or something, that's an internal site. So automatically spin up the VPN just for that URL in Safari. Or you could do something where you could do like on-demand rules, and those get really complicated. So you could say something, or could get complicated. So you could say like, if any app hits katoso.local, then spin up the VPN, and then the VPN is on. But then you also have to have disconnect rules if you only want it to be for like a specific endpoint. So, you could say like, just turn it off when it hits something else, and you have to specify what the something else is. So there are some capabilities there to use like those types of rules to be really granular with how you do things. But, there's always limitations like with any platform that exists, on how that kind of works.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else there is. So there's split tunneling that's supported. So basically split tunneling is something where you can say like certain traffic, like my on-prem traffic for katoso.local, all of that traffic, goes through my my tunnel. And then you can say like, any other traffic goes directly to the internet. So usually companies don't want to have like, YouTube traffic or Netflix, heaven forbid you're watching Netflix at work, but like, whatever. They don't want that kind of like streaming type traffic because it's just a
Absolutely.
lot of bandwidth, to be coming back on
Yep.
prem. And that's really where like those split tunneling rules can come into play by splitting that out. But I think one of the key things that we support, and there's kind of two pieces to this. The first one is that we made a call to use Azure Active Directory authentication for connecting back on-prem. So usually, if you look at like VPNs, there's two different ways that users connect, right? The first, or authenticate. The first one is they'll use username and password. Often that could be tied to your on-prem Active Directory. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a unique identity system to whatever VPN you're using, which is can be have its own identity management challenges. But not very many VPNs, if any, are actually using AAD authentication. And for us, that's really like the modern equivalent for, or the modern route for identity management and sign in for users and whatnot. And so we decided to go that route. And so what happens is, like, if I'm signed into some other application, let's say I went through Company Portal and I enrolled, or I went to Office and signed in, I'm getting this token because it's a shared token that I can now use for single sign-in across my applications. And so since Tunnel, understands that, and it's using the same authentication libraries as these other apps, now we can actually do like a single sign-on type of experience with the Tunnel application, so that's now authenticated directly to the backend. Now, sure, sometimes that token could expire and a user may get prompted to, launch the application. That's going to be pretty rare because for the most part, they're using some Microsoft application which refreshes that token, right? Like I might be using Outlook, constantly throughout the day, so I'm never going to see that message that I'm no longer, that token's no longer valid because I got a refresh token from Outlook or something.
Sure.
So that's kind of the first thing. But one of the benefits that we get from that is being able to use conditional access directly, right? And so conditional access, I think, is one of the really key things. And so, as we kind of look at like zero trust and some of those types of initiatives that a lot of companies are starting to look at, there's different levels of zero trust, and I think, in our case with Tunnel, what we're doing is we're providing zero trust capabilities, which just to, I guess, kind of define zero trust. Zero trust would be like, you don't trust devices no matter where they are. Like in the past, people would protect their data by saying like, I'm on my corporate network, I'm protected by all these firewalls, so I trust those devices. And as we've seen and found, like, that's not a good perimeter. Like, there is no perimeter, basically. Like, you have cloud-based devices. Even if you're on-prem, it's possible that there can still be breaches, right? You're not protected just because you have a corporate firewall and your devices are behind that. And so zero trust means that you don't trust that device, or you validate that the device is a trusted device and that it's compliant with your policies, and you block access, to resources if it's not compliant, right? And so that's where we kind of feed into those and take those principles with Tunnel, is that we'll say, hey, if this device isn't compliant, or it's a risky user, right? Because they have like a risky sign-in that we've been able to detect with all the machine learning and whatnot that we have in AAD, then at that point we can feed that into conditional access that says, don't allow this device to connect. Because that's the problem with VPN, right? Like, once you're connected to VPN, that network's wide open, right? And so we want to make sure that if that's a compromised device, that's not happening just at like kind of an all-up switch level. Now, there's granular conditional access that could happen beyond, the Tunnel. Absolutely. So you could grant different, as long as your apps support conditional access, then great, you could still continue to have even more granular conditional access. But for us, we just want to, at the actual like entry point to your network, block it if you're not compliant. And so I think that's just kind of a key differentiator that we have, is that we just kind of have that first party tie-in to Azure Active Directory authentication, as well as the conditional access capability. So it's very tightly integrated.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And conditional access is definitely kind of the cornerstone of our zero trust solution, right? As well, it's so important to have that option as well. So what we're gonna do then now is to I'm gonna share a video of you, Lance, doing a demo on the Microsoft Tunnel solution.
So let's install the server. So first what I've done here is I've spun up a Linux VM, and you can do this doing either Red Hat or you can do it with Ubuntu. I've done it with Ubuntu. It's basically just a vanilla install, and I've opened a firewall port to allow an inbound connection so that my clients that are external to my network can access this server to get VPN capabilities and access my on-prem network. I have a TLS certificate as well that will secure the connection between the client and the server, and I've copied up the server install as well. So let's get this started. So the first thing I'm going to do is run MS tunnel setup. And what it's doing is it's pulling down some images from Docker, and now it's prompting me for the EULA. So I'm going to accept the EULA when I'm prompted. And now what it's asking me to do is copy over my TLS certificate file, which again is used for securing the connection between the client and the server. So I'm going to exit out for just a second, and I'm going to run a quick script that I have to add the certificates to the right location so that the tunnel setup can go find those. And now I'm going to launch the setup again, and it'll just pick up where it left off. So now I'm going to continue the installation. So it's now creating the tunnel gateway services, it's installing my certificate, and now it's asking me to log in. So I am going to go to a browser on my Windows PC and complete the login here. So it just asked me for the code. So I'm going to select my account, and now it says I'm signed in. So coming back to the install, it completes the installation, and now it's asking me which site I want to join. So in this case, I'm going to copy the GUID for my US site because that's the site I want this server to join. So I'll paste that in. So it's joining that site in Intune now so that it can pull down the right configuration, and it completed the installation. So let's take a look at how we set up the Microsoft Tunnel Gateway servers. So first what you're going to do is go into the endpoint.microsoft.com admin console, and you're going to go to tenant administration, and then there's a new node here that you'll see called Microsoft Tunnel Gateway. If you look at the overview pane, since I don't have any servers installed right now, you'll see some information on how you can get started. So the first thing it'll talk to you about is how you set up server configurations, how you set up sites and servers, health status, and then after that, how you actually get the clients up and running. So first you'll create some VPN profiles for both iOS and Android, and then you'll deploy the tunnel application to the devices. So if we look at server configuration, I'm just going to create a new one here. And the benefit of having a server configuration as a separate profile is now I can share that with different servers that I install. So instead of having to set up split tunneling rules many times, now I just need to do it one time. So we're going to call this server config 1. And then the IP address range is what IP addresses will get associated with clients as they connect to your tunnel gateway server. And so I'm just going to put 192.168.0.0 and then create the subnet. And then with DNS servers, I'm just going to put in the DNS server that I want my clients to use as they connect to the tunnel gateway server. If I have a DNS suffix search that I want added to all my devices, I can add that. So in this case, I'll just add contoso.com. I can add split tunneling rules if I want. For this example, I'm not going to add it, but I can do include and exclude rules. And then I can also specify the port that I want the tunnel gateway server to listen on. So I'm going to finish creating this policy. And now what I'm going to do is go to sites and servers. So as we talked about before, a site is kind of a logical grouping of servers. So think of it almost as if you have a load balancer in front of a bunch of servers, and this is going to be kind of the single connection point for your clients. And then your load balancer would parse out that traffic to each individual server that's associated with the site. So I'm going to create a new site, and I'm going to call this my London site. For the FQDN, what I'm going to put is this server. Again, this could be just the FQDN of an individual server. It could also be the IP or FQDN of the load balancer. For server configuration, I'm going to pick the server config that we just created. And what this means is that now every server that gets associated with this particular site, the London site, is going to inherit this server config 1 and all of its settings. So I'm going to create that. And as you can see, I don't have any servers installed or associated with this site yet because I just barely created it. So to install a server, what I'll do is I'll say new server, and then I'll get a link to the download script. And this is the installation script that you run on your Linux server. And we'll show that in a subsequent demo on how you actually get this installed on your Linux box, but this is where you'll actually get the script. And then lastly, there's health status. As you can see, I don't have any servers installed yet, but this is where I would be able to see things like, if the device had checked in, if it's online, if there's any issues with that server, just to kind of help me be able to troubleshoot and know if I have any issues with those servers. So after I've completed the tunnel installation, if I go back to Tenant Administration, Microsoft Tunnel Gateway, you'll see on the Overview tab that I just see a health status now that shows me all the different servers that I have installed, as well as their health status. I don't see the cards anymore. Now, if I go over to Sites and Servers, now I can see all the servers that I have installed, which site they're associated with, as well as which server configuration is associated with that, and as well as the last check-in time. If I go to Health Status, then I can see that I have one server that's offline. It's having some issues, so that's something that I should go check out. Maybe the VM that it was on had turned off and I need to go restart that. And I can also see that I have one server that is online as well. So let's just give me a quick overview of the different health metrics that exist, and we're going to add more health metrics over time. So now we're going to create a tunnel policy for Android Enterprise. So what we're going to do is we're going to go under Devices, and then we're going to pick Android and then Configuration Profiles and create a new profile. So we'll pick Platform and Android Enterprise, and then for Profile, we'll select VPN under the Work Profile because that's the type of device that we're going to enroll for this particular demo. So we'll give it a name. We'll call it Android Tunnel. And then for connection type, we're going to pick Microsoft Tunnel, and we'll do base VPN. So for this one, we'll just say Katoso VPN again. And then for the FQDN of our server, we'll paste this in. Now, the next thing is Per-App VPN. Now, you're going to notice that this is a little bit different than the iOS one due to how the architecture is. But in this case, what you'll do is you'll actually browse to the application from within the profile itself. So I'm going to pick Edge. And then I do want this to be an always-on VPN. So what this means is that I'm doing a Per-App VPN, but I want it to automatically start up so the end user doesn't have to actually go launch the tunnel application on their device and click connect. It'll just automatically connect when their device boots up, but it will only send traffic from Edge through that tunnel. And additionally, we can have a proxy server if we need it, but in this case, we don't. So we'll click next, and then we're going to assign this out. So we're going to say all users and create. And that's it at this point. So now we've deployed our tunnel policy, and we can go to apps if we want to and just make sure that the Edge application is pushed to our devices. And here you can see that we've got the manage Play Store app for Edge. And if I look at the properties, we'll see that that's targeted to all users. Now I'll get the app pushed to the users. It'll automatically be associated with the VPN, the Per-App VPN, and it'll auto launch the tunnel application or the tunnel VPN as well when the user signs into the device. Microsoft Defender for Endpoint combines security and connectivity in a single application. If we look at the dashboard, we can see that there's currently no threats that have been found. App security scans for different malware that may be on my device. Web protection protects me against phishing attacks. And Tunnel shows me connectivity to remote resources that may be on my on-prem network. If I look on app security, I can see that I currently don't have any threats, but I can do a scan if I need to. Web protection shows me that it's enabled and can also tell me more about potential phishing attacks. And then Tunnel shows me that it's currently connected and gives me different information about what endpoint I'm connected to, the uptime, data that's been sent and received, etc. So let's take a look at a couple of these different scenarios in action. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I heard about a really cool application. And so let's go figure out what this is. It's called Test Virus. There's literally nothing suspicious about this. So we're going to install this. And now you can instantly see that I've gotten a notification indicating that there's a threat found on my device. So if I click that, now I see that there's a threat. It takes me right to app security, and I can see there's a concern. If I actually went and looked at the dashboard, I'd see my device wasn't secure and that app security has detected a malicious app. So let's go take care of this. So if I click on app security and click uninstall, Now I have an easy way to mitigate the threat, and you can see that my device immediately changes to no action required, and that the device is now secure on the dashboard. So let's go look at our email. And as you can see, I've got a really exciting email that's come in saying that I could win an Xbox Series X. Now these are super hard to find, so I want to actually go take a look at this. All right, so let's click this link and go sign up so we can get entered to win. So now when I click that, you can see that I was instantly blocked from accessing the site because it was a potential phishing attack. So I'm going to say okay, and it no longer takes me to that site. So that's great. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to check out Tunnel. So now I've got some on-prem resource that I need to access. So let's go take a look at how that works. So I'm going to go type in the address for my on-prem site. And you can see I was instantly able to get connected. So as you can see, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint combines security and connectivity using Microsoft Tunnel into a single application experience for your devices. Thank you.
So, okay, so this is the part of the conversation, Lance, that I try to represent the customer questions that are out there.
I thought you were going to say stump the PM, Andre. But only softball questions, right? Just kidding.
Exactly. So yeah, try to represent these questions and see, and try to answer them, right? So in a way that's as clear for customers to understand, what we're doing with the solution that you're doing and team are doing with the solution, etc. Does that sound okay?
Sounds
All right.
great.
So I have a few questions here. Let's see if you can survive, Lance. Let's see.
Do I get, how many strikes do I get?
You got
Four,
three.
right?
You got three.
Oh boy. All right.
All right. So first one, that's a question that I hear from customer engagements that I'm part of it usually. So there are a few alternatives for Docker, right? So Docker, it was the solution that you decided to go with in the first place, right? So why Docker?
Yeah, I mean, Docker is just it's a really well-known containerized solution, and just after we evaluated, we just felt like that was the best option. It's got some monitoring capabilities. It could do things like auto restart, containers if they shut down, and some capabilities like that. It's easily available, supported in Azure if you want to use that on an Azure VM, and so we really wanted to just make sure that it was like a supported scenario. It met our requirements as far as, like I said, the containerization, maintenance monitoring.
So from a network and firewall perspective, I know you mentioned that, we have to open some ports, etc. Do you remember them off the top of your head? What are the ports?
Oh, no, because there's like 50,000 of them. No, so there's basically if you just go to the Intune networking page, that has all the ports, those are the same ones that are recommended to be open for Tunnel as well. Okay. And the reason for that is because, on the back end, there's like a lot of infrastructure that's required both between AAD and Intune, and so if we don't ever know what you're going to hit on the back end because it's all, load balanced, right? And so in that case, you need to open up all the ports that it recommends in that document. So yeah, sorry, I don't know them all off the top of my head. There's a lot.
That's fine. So what you're saying then, there's and I didn't see this myself, but there's a session within the ports, the networking ports documentation. There's a session for Microsoft Tunnel there, right? So I'll make sure to reference here in this.
Yeah, sounds good.
In the description of this video here. Cool. All right. So do we support proxies, Lance, with Microsoft Tunnel?
Yeah, so we don't support like a break and inspect type of a proxy, but there is the capability to specify on the client side which proxy that it needs to hit. And so where the proxy comes into play is that, the client is going to hit the Tunnel Gateway component, and then there might be a proxy after that on your corporate network. And so at that point, the client has to know how to, I can't just access the network. I need to go to this proxy first. And so you just specify that in your VPN profile. On Android, just be aware, though, that proxy itself is only supported on Android 10 plus devices. So if you have earlier versions of Android, then you won't get proxy support there. On the Tunnel side, we also need to support proxies because, it's sitting on-prem and it needs to know, how to get to the network as well. And so we have documentation that just kind of explains a couple of things that you need to configure in tunnel so that it understands the proxy and you can complete the enrollment process. So I think there's just like 2 files you have to edit or something, just to add your proxy information there, and that's it. So
Cool.
but it's pretty clear in the docs on how to set that up.
Cool. Okay. That's great. That's a piece of feedback that I got from a customer as well around the split tunneling rules, right? So today, and before I ask this question, make sure that we're not making any commitments in this podcast in terms of features that Lance and team are going to release. No commitments. So if you're watching to hear commitments from the team, this is the wrong place. You're never going to hear this here. However, I want to make sure that Lance, for what he can share, at least acknowledges, piece of feedback that we're hearing from customers, right? That's to say that it's in his radar, but no commitments, right, Lance?
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, so any plans, Lance, to add support for FQDN split tunneling roles? Because I know today's IP addresses.
Yeah, so we heard that from a couple of customers as well. So IP ranges can be a little more challenging to manage, but there's something that we added, just a simple thing based on feedback we got in the UX that's also helpful there, which is the ability to instead of like adding your ranges one by one, which could be really painful, it's just like a copy paste thing now, because usually you'll have those ranges somewhere else. So now you could just have them stored in OneNote somewhere, and then you could just copy that and just paste it in. So that makes it a lot easier just to kind of manage those, but it doesn't give the same level of ease, I guess, as having like an FQDN based approach to split tunneling rules. So you could say something like, instead of having like 500 ranges, IP ranges for my on-prem network, I can now say if it's contoso.local, that's the FQDN to use for my on-prem presence. Everything else goes to the internet. And so I think it makes sense. I think it's good feedback. It's something we can consider for the future.
So is Tunnel supported in Azure government cloud environments?
Not yet. So later this month, we if all goes well, we're planning to release it to government cloud. But I just want to be very clear that just because it's in government cloud does not mean that it's FIPS certified currently. It's FIPS compliant.
Mm-hmm.
So right now it's not. So that customers, if they have a FIPS requirement, would just need to kind of evaluate that and see if that's a risk they want to take or not, and sign off on that. But it should be available, hopefully later this month in the government cloud at least.
Okay, that's great. And last one. So what role is required for admins to configure Tunnel today?
Sorry, can you?
I can hear you now.
Oh yeah, sorry. So yeah, it's just the Intune administrator, or obviously a global administrator role. But in addition, we've also added some additional capabilities. And I'm sorry, I don't remember what they all are off the top of my head. Some additional role-based access control that was getting released last month, actually, to kind of give you a little more granular control over, the management of the tunnel gateway server settings itself. And so you should be able to do that with different permissions. Now, I just can't remember the names of what they all are at the moment, but we did release some role-based access control capability specific to tunnel last month.
Okay, cool.
So I think it's just some new permissions. So you'd have to either create a new custom role or edit an existing role that you have to add those capabilities if you're not already an Intune admin or a global admin. So definitely trying to make sure that you can have different sets of admins that can manage tunnel without giving them like full Intune admin rights.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. You made it. So you need.
All right, cool.
Just in at one strike.
Sounds good.
There we go.
Perfect. Oh, I got one. Okay, that's fair. That's better than I thought it was going to be. So I was going to be at 7 strikes.
Yeah, exactly. So we have. So I have brought 3 user voice items for Tunnel specifically that I'd like to get your take on, if that's okay. But again, right? So again, no commitments, no dates, no anything. Just to really, so you can hear from Lance, what's his take on your feedback here directly. Okay. So the first one, and I'll try to make sure that I put it here in the video as well, is adding support for IPv6 when creating the split tunneling rules. Lance, is this something that you're looking, it's on your radar?
Yeah, so that's not one we've really heard from customers, honestly, and so I would say that's probably not on our short-term roadmap. If we get more customer asks for that, it's certainly something we can evaluate. But right now, I haven't heard that from any other customers, and so I think there's still quite a few customers that are using IPv4 versus IPv6, and IPv6 has its own set of issues and challenges, and so. Like I said, I think if we can get, if we get enough feedback, so, like anything, it's something that we can look at prioritizing. But right now, I would say it's probably pretty low on our priority list.
Next one. There's a question here in user voice asking, so when Intune team is going to support Tunnel VPN for macOS and Windows?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, as I mentioned earlier, we started with iOS and Android. We had reasons why we did that. And, as we've started to roll this out, I think we've, continued to hear feedback from customers that, hey, it's been great to have it on iOS and Android, but, we'd really like to start using this across Windows and Mac as well. And so, I think that's something we can consider as we continue to evaluate feedback and priorities and whatnot. But yeah, I guess no commitment quite yet on that.
Cool. Okay, Lance. Well, I think we're gonna close here with you. So thank you so much for joining. This has been great. Really appreciate it. Any final considerations or comments from you?
No, but I've been sitting here staring at your backdrop there, and it just seems like you might want to play us like some outro music or something.
Yeah,
and so if you want to do that or sing us something, I don't know what all your talents are, Andre.
I can sing. Yeah.
Oh, okay, but you can play.
I can play.
So, maybe next time we'll have to do a podcast about you, just kind of jamming away. So,
Lance, thank you so much, sir, for joining.
Yeah, you bet.
Microsoft Tunnel is very exciting feature right now in the community. Everybody's talking about it. Thank you so much, Lance. So, thank you for watching.
Yeah, you bet.
See you next time.
All right, thanks, Andre. Thanks, everyone. See ya.